Welcome everyone again. Just 1 minute for the few rules for this webinar. Please keep your microphone muted during the presentation, the speaker's presentation, in order to minimize noise and distractions. You have the chat feature, but please avoid the excessive chatting. And this webinar will be recorded for future reference. And finally, during the Q&A session, please ask questions respectfully and avoid monopolizing the time and allow everyone to participate to the discussion. Who we are? I don't know who don't know us. We are two European ONGs. Yes, Europe, Italy is the Italian delegation of European community dedicated to empowering students and young professionals across Europe by establishing meaningful connections, exchange and disseminate knowledge, and engage stakeholders in energy sector. How do we work? We have a huge Discord platform that we use for networking, for knowledge sharing, events, tips, and whatever. Then we organize every year an annual conference in a different city in Europe, and we also organize several international and local events. EC Sustainability, we are a non-profit association committed to disseminating sustainability, especially in the corporate world. The mission is to help people, and especially youth, students, and young employees in landing greener careers. How? By doing several initiatives and projects, especially in the renewable energy, waste management, biodiversity conservation, and climate change mitigation. Why we are here today? This is the second webinar of the Empowering the Future project. This project is a webinar series with the goal to explore the world of green jobs and energy transition. How? What's inside? We uncover the green job market, learn skills that you need to succeed, and understand the crucial role of the energy transition. So join the movement, meet the experts, make informed career choices, and be part of a greener and cleaner future. And thank you, and I leave the stage to Alice.
Hello. So, as I already said, I'm your host, so it's my duty to make you feel welcome, and we will try to do that starting with a Mentimeter. If you don't know what it is a presentation that is also interactive. So we ask you to scan the QR code or enter the code in the www.menti.com. And when you're done, press the thumbs up so I can know that you're in. I will wait, let's say 1-2 minutes, maybe less. We are 23, so I expect 23 thumbs up when it's 22, because I'm not gonna put the thumbs up. This Mentimeter, you don't have to worry. Your answers are completely anonymous. It's not a test. It's just for us to know what you are expecting from this webinar and to make it easier for you throughout the whole webinar. So you can propose questions, and in general, it's just for engagement to make you feel welcome. So we are 14. I'm gonna wait for at least 2 more, and then I'm gonna go. Still 14. Okay, I think it will go anyway. Hopefully you can still join, because the code is anyway here on top. So if you didn't scan the QR code, you can still put the code. So let's start with 2 truths and a lie. I hope you know this game. Well, you just have to push the answer that in your opinion it's a lie. And so we have 3 options. First, you can start already pushing the buttons. So the first one is Yes and Easy are 2 non-profit organizations. Is this a truth or is it a lie? The second one is this is our first collaboration. And the third is both organizations were founded the same year. We have 5 answers and we were 14, so I expect a bit more. 6. Okay, we have a person that decided to go against the current. 8, 9, 10 people. We're missing 4, 3, 2. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Vote, vote, vote. We're missing 2 people. Well, okay, I can already tell you the solution. So actually the lie is that both organizations were founded the same year, but I understand that someone could be tricked into this is our first collaboration because actually this is the second webinar we do. So it's our first collaboration talking about the Empowering the Future webinar series, but well, maybe you are also right because this is our second webinar. So there were 2 truths, 2 lies and 1 truth now. I'm sorry. So let's go over. How much do you know about jobs related to hydrogen policies? Of course, your answer it's again anonymous, so you can go whatever you want. Nothing at all. 2 people, a little bit. 2 people. Oh, someone is an expert. Is it maybe one of our experts? Who answered this? We don't know. Nothing at all. We have 11 people, 12, 13. So I'm happy that we have many people that already know a bit, but for someone that doesn't know nothing at all, no problem, because this webinar is meant also for you, so you can gain more knowledge about this topic. We wanted to know why you decided to join the webinar, because for us it's very important to understand what is the reason behind you participating, so that next time we can also make it better. So you can choose, I want to get a job in this sector, I want to level up my career, I want to ask questions to experts also, I'm here just for curiosity, or you're generally curious about this topic. We have 3 people who answered, 4. So I'm here just of curiosity is winning. Oh no, no, not. Curious about the topic. Very nice. I hope we can cover and maybe answer some of your question along the way. Some people want to level up their career. Very. I hope that this webinar is also meant for that. So I hope it will help you. Also for the people who want to get a job. So we have 12 answers. I think I will go over. Yeah, what comes to your mind related to hydrogen and sustainability? Just go crazy. I mean, it's an open question. You can write whatever you want. It's just for fun, for us to understand what you already know and what is your mind on right now. I understand that this will take longer for answering, so I will patiently waiting for your response. Efficient, clean, green, nice. Clean hydrogen, green hydrogen, efficiency, true. 1 person put 3 words. Okay, greenwashing. Oh, maybe you're gonna ask some question about it because it's a very interesting topic. Carbon-free fuel, energy storage, of course, complex. Maybe we can try to solve, answering question, the complexity that you see in this. Type of production, futuristic, very nice. Hard, new, yes. Innovation, mitigation. Green, it's gaining. I think maybe more people put it. Green hydrogen. Efficient, we already said that. Yeah, so we have 9 people answered. More than type of production, challenging. Yeah, of course. I will change the slide. Well, we have another long-term storage. Far. Okay, I will change the slide. And now we want to ask you, what is the one question that you would like to be answered? And having this answer would make this webinar super helpful for you. Like if you can just ask one question, what would it be? And maybe we will have time to, I hope that you will have these question answers so you can take very very nice insights from this webinar. And of course, you will find it useful. So how green is hydrogen technology? Very interesting. Our expert will for sure cover that, I'm sure, about their presentation. In their presentation, we have one person who was very bold and put their question. Let's see if someone else does it. Okay, what will the main hydrogen application in the next future? What country region do you feel has the best infrastructure or ability to implement green hydrogen most effectively? Very interesting. Future expectation about hydrogen technology. Is this technology green for real? What type of policy is needed to further the development of hydrogen economy? Which are the main challenges to these? Hydrogen guarantees of origin and PPAs. How will it work? Oh, very nice. My thesis was about that. So for me, it's also very interesting. We have 7 questions. Maybe I will wait a few more seconds. Is hydrogen value chain sustainable? Oh, that's very interesting. What's the most promising energy storage hydrogen-based technology for renewable energy solution? Nice. So we have 8 questions. I'm gonna make a screenshot for this, just so that if after no one wants to ask a question, we can answer these ones. And I think we can go. Oh, someone else put a question. How is hydrogen in relation to environmental impact? Very nice. So thank you for your input and thanks for helping us know more about what you want to get out of this webinar. We will try to take all of your ideas and opinion on board. And now it's my time to give the stage to Mahrokh, who will be the first expert to present. Yeah.
Sure. Give me a second to share my screen. And you should be able to see the presentation. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to present for hopefully newer generation who would work for a better world. Whether they will work on the hydrogen or not, it doesn't matter. What matters is that we make the better world for the future generations. So each generation should have a better opportunities and values and life quality than the last generation. That's my personal belief. So who am I? I'm a mechanical engineer by training. But by experience, I can be considered as a process engineering. I have 2 PhDs in mechanical engineering with focus on synthetic fuel production. And that was the way that I was introduced a little bit beyond the production of hydrogen and considering production of synthetic fuel from the hydrogen. I did my master in sustainable energy engineering, and I got my bachelor quite a few years ago in mechanical engineering with focus on fluid mechanics. But I started my career on working with PEM fuel cells. So I was involved in a research institute that was manufacturing and studying fuel cells for different applications. And that was the time for me that I fell in love with the hydrogen potential and application. And since 2007, I continued my work with hydrogen one way or the other. And that was the time that I was introduced to chemical engineering, a little bit of electrochemistry, and also understanding process engineering pathway. So I don't know how much you know about the hydrogen in general among the audience here, but hydrogen is the most abundant chemical substance in the universe. However, on Earth, we do not have it as a free element because it is highly reactive. It is normally in bond with another molecules or another atom. It is lightest element, so it will, upon releasing, it will tends to go up. It is gaseous, colorless, odorless, and non-toxic, so it is environmentally benign as long as there is no combustible around it, no fire or kind of risk of combustion. We discuss hydrogen more or less. If you are familiar with the history of hydrogen, you understand that hydrogen was hyped several times over the past century. Normally, it happens whenever the fossil fuel costs are rising or there is a lack in the production of fossil fuels because of the policy and the political turmoils. So the question would be asked, why now? Why this hydrogen being up in the past decade matters the most, and why should we be excited and expect more progress compared to the previous hypes of the hydrogen? So to answer that, we can consider that nowadays there is a greater attention to the potential of GHG emissions, the climate change. We unfortunately finally seeing the impact of man-made climate change. And hydrogen is a promising solution to decarbonize, especially industries that are hard to abate, for example, steel industry, cement industry, and so on and so forth. Also, hydrogen has the ability to contribute to a wider range of policy objectives. For example, a country who does not have, for example, rich bioresources normally have a good solar irradiation, or maybe they have a good potential for the wind power. And then they can use it to produce hydrogen via water electrolysis. So it can provide them with the opportunity to have energy security. Again, in the combustion of the hydrogen, only water and heat is produced, so there is no air pollution or there is no GHG emission. Also, because the renewable electricity that is rapidly growing is mostly intermittent in nature, hydrogen can provide a good solution for the energy storage. Because normally, the points that are very good in production of high amount of electrical power are not necessarily populated area, and we have to transfer this electricity to somewhere. And transferring electricity over very long distances may not be possible or feasible. So hydrogen can provide to close this gap between intermittency of renewable electricity and also between the hubs of the production of renewable electricity and where it is being consumed. Also, during the past decades, we learned a lot from renewable electricity or sustainable technologies like solar and wind. So we can use those lessons learned and apply it to hydrogen, and hopefully we can have a better progress in this technology as well. According to the studies, almost most of the studies concede that hydrogen is a key part or a vital piece of the puzzle in decarbonizing the societies. So, for example, as you can see here, by 2050, it is estimated that more than 500 million tons of hydrogen would be needed and mostly it is expected to be provided via electricity, but still we will have some part of the hydrogen that will be produced with fossil, but we expect that it would be carbon neutral because they have to use a carbon capture, utilization, and storage. And mostly it's that by that time it's still probably, unfortunately, for production of hydrogen from natural gas would make sense for some countries considering the capex and opex. Value chain of the hydrogen includes these three parts: hydrogen production, hydrogen storage and distribution, and hydrogen utilization. I will go briefly through all these stages, but unfortunately, due to the lack of time, I don't have to go in depth of all of the production pathways, for example, but I'm sure that you can find a lot of information, and at the end I will provide some resources that you can read more if you are interested. So basically, in the production, there are several pathways. However, the first three, hydrogen from fossil fuels, hydrogen from renewable sources, and hydrogen from biomass, are the most developed one, with the hydrogen from fossil fuels being the historical and conventional one. That is the main production pathway of hydrogen currently, which is via a steam reformation of natural gas. The hydrogen from renewable sources is exactly what you probably heard, is from the renewable electricity using electrolyzer to dissipate water molecules to produce hydrogen and oxygen, and it is expected to increase in share of hydrogen production in the future years. The other one is hydrogen from biomass, that in this case, it can be considered as a byproduct of biomass, because biomass has a lot of carbon, and we are a carbon-based society, so it's a very valuable source of carbon that we can use. However, for example, in some conversion techniques like fast pyrolysis, when you are producing char to be used in the agriculture industry, you are producing a lot of hydrogen as a byproduct that can be used, for example, for other applications. So that's why that it is expected that in countries that they have a good source of biomass, especially the second generation, then that would be playing a role in their hydrogen value chain production. But the type of hydrogen is color-coded, and it depends based on the source that hydrogen is coming. So brown would be the hydrogen that is produced from coal. It would be the cheapest, and actually it is the first gas that was used in lighting up European cities at the beginning of 1900s. Then we move to the natural gas via steam reformation. And if it is without carbon capture, it can be considered gray. If it is with carbon capture, then it is blue hydrogen. Turquoise is a new way of producing hydrogen, more or less. And by new, I mean that it is a little bit newer than the gray, but it is not as new as the green hydrogen, where you are pyrolysing the natural gas to get the hydrogen out. And it is better because it is easier to remove the carbon content compared to the steam reformation. Of course, green is the most famous one around at the moment, which is from water and renewable electricity. And orange is from biogenic resources. Then we have pink, red, and purple that are one way or the other related to the nuclear power. And this has a little bit of difficulty, especially in the policy and in the society point of view, because of the concerns of people about having a nuclear power. as a source of heat or electricity. And the last one is gold and white that occurs naturally in the earth crust, and it's a kind of a byproduct of the fracking, where the water is reacting with the iron ions and release hydrogen. It is considered gold because it's a kind of golden opportunity because it can produce a continuous amount of hydrogen. However, because it's a kind of a result of fracking and there is a concern over the fracking in general, there is also concerns about getting hydrogen in this way. The next step after producing the hydrogen would be storing hydrogen. There are basically three ways to store hydrogen: as gaseous, liquid, or solid. The gaseous one for the large scale is using underground storage. For example, salt caverns are the most efficient one for the large scale. However, it is very geographically limited. There is only suitable storage spaces in US, in north of Europe, and some parts of northern parts of Africa. There are some other possibility being considered to, for example, use rock caverns or depleted gas fields. However, there are some concerns over safety over there. The simplest one of the gaseous would be the pressurized containers. Then you can have it anywhere you want. However, if you are talking about the larger scale, it means that you have to have a huge footprint to accommodate for the locating these pressurized containers. And so to increase the amount of hydrogen that you can store in a smaller space, then liquid hydrogen or liquefying the hydrogen has been suggested. However, hydrogen needs very low temperature, like minus 253, to be liquefied, and it become a very energy intensive situation where that, for example, to store 1 gigajoule of hydrogen, you need 0.3 to 0.7 gigajoule of primary energy to store hydrogen in a liquid form. So normally that one is reserved for options that you have a guaranteed application of hydrogen close by, and of course there is no option to have an underground a storage of the hydrogen, the gaseous hydrogen. The last one is metal hydrides, that you are storing hydrogen in a solid form. However, it is under research and development, and they are normally used for the smaller cycles and smaller volumes. The good thing for them is that then they do not have the risk, say, concern of the gaseous hydrogen storage or the energy intensity of liquid hydrogen storage. However, on the other hand, they are the heaviest type of storage, and as I mentioned, they are under research and development. So to tackle this situation, the challenges of storing hydrogen, two other aspects were suggested. One is ammonia, and the other one is liquid organic hydrogen carriers. Like, for example, methanol. So in this case, when you are producing hydrogen, then that hydrogen acts as an intermediary medium towards the secondary fuel. For example, in case of ammonia would be a non-carbonaceous, or in case of methanol would be carbonaceous fuel. Of course, if we want to consider this one green, then the carbon should be considered as the recycled carbon, and most preferably biogenic captured carbon. The good thing about using ammonia or methanol is that we have a very readily and efficient infrastructure to store and distribute them. They are either in the liquid form, or they can be in the liquid form with a much higher temperature. For example, hydrogen was minus 253. In case of ammonia, it would be minus 33, which make it much easier to liquefy ammonia. And then you can transfer them because they are easier to be liquid, and keep them in that form. It is much easier to transport them across the borders and over the seas. Then we have to talk about transportation of hydrogen, because like the storing of hydrogen, we do not have the infrastructure to transport the hydrogen. There are two main options that are being considered for the countries that they already have infrastructure in the natural gas distribution system. For example, like Germany, they are considering to produce this hydrogen and inject it in that infrastructure to increase the LHV of the fuel and also decrease the emission that is coming from burning that mixture of gases. However, the problem is that each country has their own regulation and demands to put a cap on how much hydrogen you can inject in the natural gas infrastructure. For example, in Germany, you are only allowed 2%. And that's because the regulation and the certificate for the application and the valve, for example, are not there to guarantee that those equipments can handle higher amount of hydrogen. If for a country that doesn't have this natural gas infrastructure, like Sweden, then there are other types. For example, they are considering new infrastructure to be built in. Then we have pipelines, trucks, shipping. Yes.
Mahrokh, sorry to interrupt. You have 1 minute left. Maybe you can try to,
sure,
so that Amalia can join, and then if they have questions, you can answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So they are considering different type of distribution. Then on the application, hydrogen, because of the versatility, you can use it from the power and heat generation to the industry feedstock to the transportation, for example, road transportation or the maritime industry. And what it would be next, it would be considering the infrastructure needs where we have to adapt them. Address the value chain complexity and so on and so forth. Make sure that the policy and support measures are there and there are regulation and standards in handling the hydrogen. Specifically defining some terminology so everybody would be on the same page. Then I have some slides on the carrier path that you can check yourself to see, for example, what is needed at the moment in the hydrogen value chain and where your, for example, passion lies, and if you're exactly excited to work with the hydrogen and you like to work with the regulation, there are several carriers that you can choose, for example, as a regulatory expert, as an attorney, as an asset managers, or even as a buyer or politician to be able to work. And I added some interesting reads if you are interested to know more about the technology in a specific, or also what is happening in the market. So thank you so much, and I'm so sorry that I went over the board. Hydrogen is my passion, and it is always hard for me not to talk about hydrogen.
Don't worry. We can leave the floor to Amalia, and of course later, if someone wants to maybe revise the slides, you can put it in the Q&A chat, because our normal chat is not working. So please put all your questions or comments or feedback in the Q&A feature of the meeting. Thank you. You can start sharing, Amalia.
Okay, I will share my screen. not working very well, team. So I hope you can still see it. I think now you can see the slides.
Yes.
Okay. I'm in the airport, so maybe you hear some weird noise, but I'm here and I can listen perfectly. So I am Amalia. I'm an clean energy technology analyst at the International Energy Agency, and more specifically in the hydrogen unit. And every year we publish the Global Hydrogen Review. This time I will present what we published in September last year, where we try to keep track of the latest status on hydrogen and low emissions hydrogen. And I will just present, I would like to start with hydrogen today, what is happening. So actually today we are consuming some amount of hydrogen. It's 95 million tons of hydrogen. I will put it a bit in context. For example, in energy terms, this is equivalent to 7-8% of the amount of natural gas we consume. But this hydrogen, whose consumption is increasing over time, is actually mostly consumed in the industrial sector for making ammonia. Ammonia is widely used for fertilizers, for explosives, and for other applications for making methanol. And in refinery for a process that is called hydrodesulfurization to remove the sulfur, for example, for diesel or jet kerosene. And hydrogen consumption is still increasing because we are still increasing the oil refining over time. The main consumer of hydrogen today is China by far. They consume almost 1/3 of the total hydrogen production, and it's because of the importance of oil refining in China. So it's still the consumption of hydrogen for new applications is very limited, so small that we cannot even see it in the figure. And another thing, hydrogen today is mostly produced from natural gas steam reforming, and here this legend means without carbon capture and storage. Then in some countries, particularly in China, is produced from coal. And then the amount of hydrogen that could be produced for what we call low emission sources, this could be from renewable electricity and an electrolyzer, and with fossil fuels with high capture rates of CO2, is less than 1%, which this implies that today hydrogen production worldwide emits 900 million tons of CO2. This is equivalent to the emissions of a country like Germany, and hydrogen production worldwide is responsible for around 2.5% of global CO2 emissions from the energy sector. This means that today hydrogen is still part of the problem and not of the solution yet. Nevertheless, we have hopes and we can see progress towards decarbonizing hydrogen production and also towards targeting hydrogen consumption to other sectors. And at the IEA, at the International Energy Agency, we publish every year different scenarios that are not forecasts, but that show image on how the future might evolve. And one of these scenarios is the net zero emissions scenario by 2050. This is published in our World Energy Outlook, which is openly available for free, and you can all have a look at it on our webpage, and sometimes in dedicated publications about net zero emissions scenario. And in this scenario, where we try to see what will happen if the world wants to remain below 2 degrees scenarios and achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 in the energy sector. So what we see is two things. First of all, we have a transition and we start decreasing the hydrogen consumption from the hydrogen production from unabated fossil fuels. Unabated fossil fuels means natural gas and carbon without carbon capture and storage. We move some of this consumption we have today, especially for ammonia, for methanol, towards low emissions hydrogen. We can see especially how the green bars are moving from one side to the other. This is low emission hydrogen can help us decarbonize the hydrogen consumption we have nowadays. But we also see a substantial increase on the hydrogen consumption because it can play a role to decarbonize the economy, especially to decarbonize those hard to abate sectors, to decarbonize sectors that cannot be easily electrified. We need to take into account that hydrogen One moment, I need to change. We need to take into account that hydrogen production is still expensive. 1 second, I will have to change my place.
No worries, no worries.
It's
Don't
because it's a
worry.
bit
Very
noisy
by the way.
and I'm hearing other conversations. Sorry. Just 1 second, sorry. Sorry.
Don't worry, don't
Yeah.
well.
So because hydrogen production is expensive, we will only use it in those sectors that cannot be easily electrified. And we can see here in this figure that it will mostly be used, for example, for aviation through e-fuels in the maritime sector where it's like electrification is really, really complex. For example, for freight trucks. And we also see sometimes hydrogen use for power generation, but this hydrogen use is actually, it's minor and it's for backup. The hydrogen consumption in power generation in this net zero emissions scenario is around 1%, which means that the decarbonization of the electricity sector will be driven by renewables. But hydrogen can play a role as a storage, as a backup when the sun is not shining and the wind is not blowing. So this is the type of exercise we do in the agency about working with scenarios and what will happen in the future. And what we do specifically in my unit is to keep track of what is happening in low emissions hydrogen worldwide, and we keep track of the status of projects. And I will present here afterwards a brief overview of what is happening, what is the state of play, where we are, if are we in line with the potential net zero emissions scenario, how we are. So, as I saw at the very beginning, today hydrogen production from electrolysis, which sometimes is referred to as green hydrogen if the electricity used for the electrolysis is renewable, but we try not to use colors, was 0.1% in 2022, which means this was tiny. We have very small projects that use electrolyzers. And actually, what we see is a very important trend in this figure, and you can see the red bar. The red bar is China. The electrolyzers in China in 2020 were just 10% of the world, but by 2022, China ended with 50% of the electrolyzer capacity, which means that they push a lot of the growth and they are installing a lot of electrolyzers. And by 2023, we saw that this capacity actually increased 3 times, which is a huge increase, but still it's really, really small. We will produce like 0.2% of today's hydrogen consumption. So this is still very small, even if we hear a lot about hydrogen, and most of the progress is happening in China. But when we look very far into the future to 2030, well, not so far, actually, just in 6 years to 2030, we actually see that the installed capacity of electrolyzers could be 420 gigawatts, while today is around 2.5 gigawatts. So this means a growth 20 times larger, which is a significant growth. And we could produce with these electrolyzers around 28 million tons of hydrogen. So if today we are consuming 95 million tons of hydrogen, this means that if all these projects materialize, we could approximately produce 30% of hydrogen through electrolysis, decreasing considerably the greenhouse gas emissions associated to hydrogen consumption. And we see that projects are starting to be big. Now we have a few projects that are over 100 megawatts in China, but actually what we see is like most of the projects that have been announced are in the what we call the gigawatt scale. This means a very big projects, very different to the ones we have today. Nevertheless, we need to raise attention in one issue, and is that only 3% of these projects of the total capacity are under construction or have achieved what we call a final investment decision. You will see here very often FID. This means that the investors have committed to construct the plant. Some of them are under feasibility, but you can see in red that a lot of them are at early stage. So very often these are just announcements, intentions, but still they are not moving. So there is a risk because we only have 6 years left for 2030, and there is a risk that these projects might not materialize because it also takes time to construct them. And then I go next. So here I would like to show you a bit of the geographical diversity of where electrolyzer projects have been announced. And so the dots mean the electrolyzer projects. We have 14 gigawatts of installed capacity that has been committed. And a lot of these projects actually are being announced in China, and they are very big projects. And then we see a lot of small, especially smaller projects in Europe. There are a few large ones, but less. And we have a new player that is the Middle East. And actually, so it's growing fast. And the largest project that has been committed is a 2 gigawatt project in Saudi Arabia. And and this is the largest project that has been committed worldwide, and is in Saudi Arabia. But when we look at those projects that have only been announced or that are under feasibility stage without being committed yet, we see how the geographical diversity increased a lot. And then we have other regions that did not appear before that want to play a role. That's especially the case of Australia and Latin America, with around 20% of the announcements. But we also see new regions coming into play, like Africa, with 10% of the announcements. So the geographical diversity increased a lot, and there are a lot of countries and regions that want to play their part in the low emission hydrogen. So the project that had been announced could let us to produce around 30% of the hydrogen that is consumed today from electrolysis. At the IEA, we also keep track of those projects that will produce what we call low emission hydrogen with fossil fuels with high capture rates of CO2. Today, around 60% of the CO2 can be captured in this hydrogen production process, but with some technological innovation, we hope that we can achieve a capture rate of around 92% of the CO2. And in that case, the emissions associated to hydrogen production could be substantially reduced. So we also see that around 10 million tons of low emission hydrogen could be produced through this technological pathway by 2030. The geographical diversity is much more limited. North America and Europe account for 90% of the announcements, and we don't see other regions that want to play a role. But similarly, as in the case with electrolyzers, just 1 million ton of these low emission hydrogen projects have been committed, and still a big part of is under feasibility study. So there is a lot of uncertainty about what will happen. And I will explain a bit later why there is some uncertainty and why investors are still reluctant to move ahead and take final investment decisions. And just if you think, is this 28 million tons and 10 million tons of low emission hydrogen a lot or not? So actually, in the net zero emissions scenario of the IEA, we see much more hydrogen consumption, low emission hydrogen consumption, and these projects in total will represent around 55% of the low emission hydrogen consumption we see in the net zero emissions scenario. So this means that in a net zero emissions scenario, we will need a lot of low emission hydrogen already by 2030. And also, we have some resource in our webpage that you can have a look at it, and it's the hydrogen production cost from hybrid solar PV and onshore wind systems. We are also updating it, this hydrogen cost, to consider offshore wind systems, and you can see that those regions that they are in red is where the hydrogen can be produced at the cheapest cost. And we see in some regions, for example, in the Middle East, in Australia, in Latin America, where hydrogen production costs through electrolysis could be as low as $1.5 per kilogram of hydrogen. And this number means that it will be competitive with today's hydrogen production costs through fossil fuels. So this means that in these regions, it could be cheaper to produce hydrogen through electrolysis than what it costs today to produce it through fossil fuels. So it opens up a lot of possibilities. And also because you can see that in some regions, hydrogen production costs will be expensive. So it opens up the possibilities of trading hydrogen for those regions where the production could be cheaper to those regions where the demand is high, but the production will be much more expensive. So actually what we see is that the possibility of exporting hydrogen is the driver of a lot of projects. Around 40% of the projects that have been announced because they are considering exporting hydrogen towards somewhere else. It's especially relevant the case of Australia, of Latin America, and most of these hydrogen is targeting Europe, the Asia Pacific region, particularly Japan and Korea, that have very limited potential to produce themselves low emission hydrogen. And then, as Mahrokh mentioned before, we do have a challenge on how we are going to transport this hydrogen. Hydrogen is a complex molecule. It becomes liquid at minus 253 degrees, while natural gas does it at minus 162. Today, hydrogen could be transported as ammonia, but today's ammonia trading is relatively small compared to the needs, what we see that in this scenario. So there is still a lot of uncertainty, and only 3 of these projects have achieved a final investment decision, and most of them are still at the conceptual stage. And I think I have seen also in the Q&A question, like what type of policies we need to make the hydrogen economy happen. So we actually see quite a lot of policies regarding production of low emission hydrogen. According to the policies that are in place, the government targets will be around 35 million tons of low emission hydrogen by 2030. This aligns well with the projects that have been announced. However, when we look into demand, these numbers are much more smaller. The government targets are very low. We will only achieve around a demand of around 14 million tons. It seems to be there is a mismatch between production and demand. And if we consider some private initiatives to buy this low emission hydrogen, sometimes at a premium cost, the demand will be still low. So this is an area where from the IEA, we are actually calling governments to pay more attention in order to stimulate a demand for this low emission hydrogen, because if we have no demand, if we don't have someone who will buy this low emission hydrogen, then the project that have been announced will not happen. So this is an area where further attention is needed. And another area where further attention is needed is in innovation. So I will just encourage you to have a look. We have this resource that is called our Clean Energy Technology Guide, where you can look at the technology readiness level of around 500 technologies, including hydrogen-related technologies. And I know understanding this figure can be a bit challenging right now, but whatever is in orange and yellow means it's at a low technology readiness level, and usually has not been still demonstrated at a scale. And these are the uses of hydrogen, and we see here a lot of the potential uses of this hydrogen are still not demonstrated at the market scale. So we need to move up. We need more innovation, and also to share with you some of the other analysis we do. We, for example, keep track of all the patenting activity on hydrogen technologies. And in this figure, you can see that the purple and yellow lines are very similar. These are patents for production of hydrogen and end use of hydrogen. Of course, we need patents for production because the technology still needs improvement. But for example, electrolyzer technologies have relatively high current levels. They are commercial today, and what we have to do is to decrease costs, to increase efficiency, to increase the flexibility, and in some cases, such as PEM technology, to decrease the reliance on critical materials. However, in end use, especially in the hard-to-abate sectors, we see very little progress. If we keep track of who is patenting in end use, this is mostly the automotive sector, while the automotive sector can be easily electrified. But we don't see patenting in other sectors that cannot be electrified. And that's a call of attention to increase innovation towards those applications that will consume low emission hydrogen. And I have to
Sorry,
wrap up,
Amalia.
so I will just.
We have 1 minute left.
Sorry. So yeah. So I will just wrap up, and I will just encourage you to go to our webpage. We have a lot of reports available. Actually, there was a question about how green is hydrogen, whatever. So we have a report that is called Towards Hydrogen Definition based on the emissions intensity, where we precisely deal with these questions. We also have all the numbers I saw. You can do it yourselves because you can download all the data on Excel. We also have an interactive tool. So I just recommend you to have a look at this online resource that we have available. And I will not go through the recommendations, but these are usually the type of recommendations we share, as you can see here, and you can read more in our Global Hydrogen Review. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for both of your presentations. And now we are ready to take any questions that pops up in the Q&A. If you want, you can also, if you're bold enough, you can also unmute yourself and ask your question as briefly as you can. So we try to answer more questions. I will wait some seconds, just quiet for you. Okay, Eric, you can jump in. Do you want to write it or you can speak also?
I can unmute, it's fine. My name is Eric. I'm the president of Yes Europe. I've just come back from a conference and I was listening to the last segment just now. Based on everyone who's been speaking today in terms of your research backgrounds, what kind of academic courses would you recommend towards young people in terms of what should people be targeting at studying at university or research centers in order to prepare themselves best for careers in what you've been disseminating today?
Mahrokh, I can go, but as Mahrokh present a great slide, so you can actually work in hydrogen from a lot of different backgrounds. So my recommendation is that you study what you like the most so that you find passion in the work you do. I will explain if I think for Mahrokh will likely be similar. We are very passionate about our work. We dedicate a lot of time, so you need to love what you do. So each of you, you can always find the specific thing to work in, so just work on what you love the most.
Yeah, I second that. The thing is that hydrogen, even though that it has been around for a long time, considering this evolution of the hydrogen, we need talents on every aspect of the hydrogen. I myself am in love with technical and the numbers. I feel more happy when there is a number there than I have to calculate that. And tackling technical challenges. So if someone is like me, I urge them to follow up on one of the engineering pathways: mechanical, electrical, civil engineer, safety, anything can be related to the hydrogen. But if you are not, for example, really eager to work with the technology, for example, you are more inclined towards the business, then anything that can help you to become a business analyst, market analyst, or a business development manager, all of that are also fine. So it depends on what is your final ambition. What do you want to do with your life? And then, as Amalia mentioned, follow that path, and then you will find usefulness in hydrogen as well.
Maybe if you want, you can reshare the slide that you had about the jobs, Mahrokh.
Sure, absolutely. I actually took that one. I found it from Department of Energy in US. And I found it very interesting that they had such a development. So I thought it would be very interesting. Of course, I have a slide here to explain a little bit, but I think this one showcased that you can, whether you're in the entry or the advanced level, there are so ways. For example, someone may like academy career, then you can end up as a researcher or a professor and try to encourage the next generation of students to move forward. But maybe you prefer the sale, and then you can be a salesperson, or you can buyer, sales engineer. Basically, you can do anything. If you like journalism, you can become a communication manager, editor, writer, anything. And I used to work in academy. Now that I'm moving into kind of an industry, I see that we are actually lacking talent, especially from a more diverse community, from women or other ethnicities, because the more I work in the work environment, different projects, I realize that projects are more successful when we have more voices around the table. And so I urge people to apply if they are interested in this topic and try to work with it. And we would be happy to have more and new voices around.
Fantastic. Those are excellent answers. And if I can offer a big well done and congratulations to Yes Europe Italy and Easy Sustainability for this event and all the promotion you guys have been doing. I think our Italian country team is one of the most successful, one of the largest country teams that we have, and we're always really proud whenever they have projects and events going on. So a big well done from everyone at Yes Europe for that, and congratulations on tonight.
Thank you. On name of everyone. You can be bold as Eric and speak, or you can write your question in the Q&A.
I might have
Neil?
a question for you, Alicia. The one of before. I don't know if you remember the PPA, the hydrogen
Yes,
PPA.
so yeah, I can take it from there. So the question is, hydrogen guarantees of oranges and PPAs, how will it work?
Yes, like from my side.
Would you like to go ahead, Amalia? I think.
If yeah.
Well, the thing is that I worked with some projects, and it totally depends on where the project is happening, at least from my point of view, because I had encountered some countries that they have a high level of renewable electricity, and then they said that, okay, it doesn't matter. It's, for example, if it is not from solar or wind, it is coming from hydropower. So we can have a high capacity factor. On the other side, there were countries that is not the case, unfortunately. And then also the policies with each country might be different. So it's a little bit difficult for me to have a unique answer to this question. Especially, for example, for other countries, I saw that we went ahead, but then we found out that it was not necessarily hydrogen, but it was about decarbonizing a certain industry that they needed to remove the carbon emission. And then we found out that, of course, they have a possibility to go PPA and electrify their process. So in that case, we dropped hydrogen completely. So, but more or less, from the technical point of view, it is considered that if you have a good application for the electricity, of course, it is better to use it directly. But for the PTX and hydrogen projects, more or less, we consider a specific, for example, wind farm that is dedicated for the production of hydrogen, and it is not for something else. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, no. Thank you very much. Yeah, so basically geography is a big factor on that. Yeah, no, I saw indeed that there are some specific countries that invested already, like in long-term PPAs for hydrogen. If I'm not wrong, Spain was one of that with Iberdrola, if I'm not wrong. But yeah, like, still I'm more on the business field and I'm still learning on the details, technical details. But it was a really nice webinar, and thank you very much for having you here.
Thank you for asking questions, because this is the most important part. Well, I think, in my opinion, at least. So you can go home and be happy about having all of your answers of all of your questions. And if you're bold, again, you can speak up, raise your hand, and ask questions. Otherwise, we can also give a very big thank you to our speakers, because we don't want to take more time out of you.
I think I can answer one of the questions, because it was quite close to my heart, and it was about what would be the most promising storage technology. Maybe they are not following up with that question, because I maybe have answered that. But if someone is interested here on a research topic, for example, or a master thesis, I suggest them to look into the energy storage, hydrogen storage, because that's actually where the bottleneck is. We have to find more efficient that are not limited to the geography. But from the trend that I see, the secondary fuel is the most promising, whether we are talking about ammonia, especially that ammonia is a very valuable product for the agriculture. Actually, if you look in the studies, one of the main points of having this population boom was production of cheap ammonia for the agriculture, for the fertilizer. But on the other hand, if we are talking about the fuel and energy sector, then fuels like methane and methanol that are coming from the captured biogenic carbon plus green hydrogen would be the best option at the moment, because the infrastructure is there. It is easier to store them, transport them, and then you don't need to change also the application. You can use them directly in the engines that are already developed. But it would be, of course, much better, and it is really needed to find a good way of storing pure hydrogen if we want to move away from carbonaceous fuels. So I'm really looking that would very excite me if someone comes up with a technology that is very efficient.
We also highlight something similar. I didn't present the work we had been doing in infrastructure, but we also keep track of the different projects regarding transport and storage of hydrogen. And we actually highlight the issue about hydrogen storage also a lot, because project announcements are very small. We have had some call of interest from some gas TSOs, but the program seems to be really low. So we might have a problem because hydrogen storage not only is used to provide flexibility, it's also used to provide energy security, likely in the future. So we also raise that call of attention.
Thank you. Yes, the question was, what's the most promising energy storage hydrogen-based technology for renewable energy? And I think you covered it. So I hope that the person who asked this question is still here with us and had their answer.
Even if not, I hope that we managed to motivate someone to find. Yes, that's the most important. And if we manage, Amalia and I managed to motivate someone to look into the hydrogen, and someday maybe they find a solution, I would be more than happy.
Thank you.
Before we go, I wanted to ask one question, because I think a week ago, the policy-wise, Germany gave a grant of 500 million euros for electrolyzers. So do you kind of see that kind of trend increasing, where government put a lot of money into hydrogen to increase the speed of the technology?
I think yes. The thing is that normally governments push for something, for example, for wind and solar, we saw a lot of push from the government. But in Europe, at least, with the hydrogen, the push came from the industry sector because they realized that they need to decarbonize, especially is a steel industry in Sweden. And they looked at okay, there are not many options for us and the hydrogen, and they put a lot of effort on the hydrogen and got a little bit of help from the government. And then they suddenly government realized that, oh, okay, these things are coming and we don't have the regulation. So I think a little bit governments are playing catch up on the hydrogen, because I know from my positions that there are so many industries that are looking into using hydrogen for decarbonizing them even before that the governments started putting roadmaps around. But definitely putting money investment from the governments, it gives a little bit of security to the investors that when someone comes with a new project and a new, for example, producer of electrolyzer, then it can be a little bit better for the risk analysis and they can be considered bankable and get the investment. I'm not sure if Amalia is agreeing with me, but this is at least what I feel
Yes.
at the moment.
So why, for example, I mentioned that the technology readiness level, for example, of electrolyzers is high, the steel is more expensive to produce. So we need to be aware that for industries to be able to use it, they need to overcome this cost issue. And also the USA, through the Inflation Reduction Act, is providing subsidies with a different approach than Europe is doing it. So what we will expect is that these subsidies are only provided until the technology achieves a degree of maturity where they are no longer needed. But in the meanwhile, we will see different types of subsidies. Like now we see more grant types. What we will likely see in the future is that they move to decrease the risk of these projects, for example, through loan guarantees, state-backed loans, this type of, it will start moving because it will, over time, it will become less risky. Until a time where they are no longer needed, but they are not still there.
Thank you. Thank you for answering. Kingsley, was your question answered? Are you satisfied?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
satisfied.
Perfect. So, well, before leaving you, we wanted to ask something from you. So we hope that you like can you see my screen? I hope so.
Yes.
We hope that you like the session, our webinar, and what our expert had to say about hydrogen technology and policy. Maybe I hope you are a very kind-hearted person and you give us feedback on this. You can scan the QR code that you see on the screen. It's very useful for us to understand where are the points where we can improve, so that next time we also give you a webinar that is even better than this and the previous one we had. Last time we had many feedback and we hope to have many feedback this time too. Otherwise, we can also send you, we are gonna send you also an email if you fill up the questionnaire with the follow-up and the information about the next webinar. So if you also want information about it, please give a feedback. Hope to see you in the in the Excel when I look at the email. I hope I gave you enough time to scan the QR code. And well, I think that's a wrap. Thanks a lot for your input, our expert, and for the input from the chat. The question you asked, very insightful. Hope to see you next time. I'm very grateful for your participation, and I think that's it. If someone wants to add something else.
So
yes, oh, sorry, Keith. Go on, please. Okay, so also from my side, great, thank you. And I think that tonight I will come back home with a lot of new information, with a lot of new knowledge, and even a clearer understanding of what's the actual situation of hydrogen and what are the future trends and the future potentials. But most the most important thing, I think that I will come back home with the passion that you had to transmit all your messages and all your insights that inspired me a lot to go deep into one topic, understand more, study more, and look at different aspects of the same topic. So thank you.
All right, so final word of thanks. Thanks everyone again today. If you do need the slides, please reach out to us and we'll send you the slides so you can take your time. Also, if you need the resources from the EIA, we can try to get it from Amalia and send to you. Just send an email to Is It Sustainability or Yes Europe Italia, and we'll get that to
Or
you.
leave a feedback.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, that would be nice. Also, in May and June, we have 2 big webinars coming. In May, we have a webinar on EU transition plan and policies. In June, we have, before the summer break, another webinar on ESG management and strategies. So please stay tuned, check our LinkedIn and our posts. And thank you again today, and have a good night, have a good dinner if you haven't had one, and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Have a nice
Bye.
evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.